Right, so here we're going. Want to make sure everyone could hear me just fine. Everyone could hear me fine. I think it's working out. Should have checked. Should have checked. Okay. Sensei Shui is live. Okay, so I'm hoping that all of this works out. We'll see how it goes. And then going to go ahead and get on TikTok. Can you hear me? For the persons on, can you hear me? Is the sound good? Is the sound good? If you could just a thumbs up or like say something so I know. Going to be going live on TikTok for the first time. Actually talking about something today. So give me a second and then we will go ahead and get started. All right, so today we're going to be talking about shadow work and transmutation. All right, so welcome to episode 15 of Parlez with Sensei Shui. And today we are talking about shadow work and transmutation. So I want to get more into the reason of why was I pulled to do this? Why was I pulled to do some type of live about shadow work? First off, someone asked me explicitly to do it. So of course I respond to it because like all this is question based. I have a few things that I speak about, but rather it is stimulated by the question. So if there's no questions, I normally cut it off at about 20 or 30 minutes. So today I'm talking about shadow work and transmutation. If you have any questions about that, just let me know. I'm going to go ahead and get started and talk about, well, what is shadow work? All right, so not to redefine a term, let's put what my perspective is on it. Because when you think about this term, this is a new term. This is something that I would even put on the new age marketing thing. That, oh, shadow work, shadow work, shadow work, shadow work. But okay, what is it? I would say shadow work, it's confronting the darker side of yourself. Or when I say it's the part of the spiritual journey that most people don't talk about, right? Somehow, because personally, if you ask me, I don't really like the word shadow work. Why? Because it makes it seem like it's something that supplements the spiritual journey and spiritual growth. And it's not like as if it's not something that's necessary for your growth in the first place. So when you're going and you're doing the shadow work, when you're doing these things, what I'm just going to call it is on your spiritual path. All right. Because when you're in a spiritual path, when you're growing, what happens naturally is you will be faced with adversity. You'll be faced with yourself. A lot of times that you see, oh, the shadow work, I got to deal with this. And there's all these people. Well, let's scale back for a second. What's it called when you have a relation with someone else? It's called a relationship. Something that you have with your mother, your father, your cousin, your brother, your sister, whoever it is. How does this work? A relationship, right? So a lot of people, we have relationship issues and experience different things. But let's scale this back. What's the very first relationship that you ever had in your life? I'll let you think about that for a second. The first relationship is with yourself. And everything else mimics or is a reflection. It is a mirror to the way we relate to ourselves. It's a way that we treat ourselves, the way we speak to ourselves inside, the reasons we give for why we receive, why we give, why things happen. So in order to have some changes, please ask questions. In order to have some changes, then we must start to analyze and write down the dialogues that we have about ourselves. Because if we're just kind of going by about what comes online and letting that shape our minds, we're really not the ones forming our own path or simply following the lead of someone else. There's nothing wrong with being guided, but when you're asking for permission to be yourself or asking permission to feel or to do something, you might want to double check into what the nature of this is from. Okay, apologies, my dog's in the corner acting crazy. But to go more into shadow work, the thing about it is I just use the term so people can know what I'm talking about. But I'd like to talk about what's really going on the spiritual path. When you're going down on the spiritual path, you're faced to realize that many of the things you experience in life, often the things that are unpleasant, are based on the way that we perceive them and the story that we tell to why these things happened. Because if you anything like me, things that happened in your past and you're really confused and it was hard for you to understand why someone left you, well, what is the reason that you told yourself when you were a child? What was the reason that you told yourself that this happened? What logic are you using to explain this? It's very important that you write this down and become clear with it. Otherwise, you're going to keep going and keep continuing living and making this narrative come true through the law of attraction. Right? The law of attraction, when I'm speaking of that, if you haven't heard of it before, basically, it's not just what you speak, but what you believe on a subconscious level. What you emanate out your heart is what manifests into your reality. So when it comes for dealing with the darker sides, or why do you rather say parts of the personality that sometimes we ignore, in order to continue to move forward, what we must do is continue to be honest with ourselves. Surround yourself with people who are honest with you, not just those who always make you feel good all the time. I know that's a really hard thing to say, but how could you know if you have spinach or something stuck in your teeth if someone doesn't tell you? Right? Yeah, you could see a mirror, but sometimes how long is it until you actually go and you pay attention? You're like, well, how many people have I talked to and I had this thing in my teeth? But no one told me. What does that say more about those around you? And that's just a metaphor I'm using, and sometimes factual. Like if you've ever had something in your teeth and you don't remember the last time, or if you had something hanging out your nose and someone didn't tell you until you got home, what does that say about the people you're around? They might talk about you, but they won't help you with the flaws that they might see. Because when I think about the friendships I have and the relationships I have that I'm grateful for, because again, when I say relationship, I do not mean something that's romantic. When I say relationship, I'm using this word between an interaction of a conscious being and another being, or a conscious being and some type of object, right? That as a relationship. When it comes for the relationships I find most beneficial and productive and that build me up in my life, those types of relationships are those that help me become better by letting me know not where I fall short, but where they see the frustrations I have within myself. Where do I keep hitting the wall? How's it going? Ask questions, please. Talking about shadow work and transmutation. Please ask questions. This is stimulated by questions. So if I don't have any questions within the next 13 minutes, I'm just going to cut it off, because this is very much catered to whoever is listening. So if you have any questions about what I say, please ask questions, and then we'll continue to go from there. But to kind of continue on what I was speaking on, the type of beings you want to surround yourself with are those that are going to be honest with you, letting you know what's up, letting you know how it really is. You know, if you had a hard day or something happened to you, or say you had a disagreement, this may sound strange, but you want the type of people who will ask you, well, what did you say in this situation? What happened to you? Not always blaming the other person, like, oh yeah, you're right, he's just a da-da-da and da-da-da and da-da-da, they didn't do anything and da-da-da. Well, what gave the permission for this type of person to enter our life? What things that did I say to provoke this other person? Right? You want the type of people who are going to ask you in these questions, because otherwise you're going to go about this facade like you're this perfect person without flaws. And when I say flaws, I mean like you're walking in a place and you don't have a rock in your shoe. You want someone to tell you, hey man, you're kind of walking weird. Do you have a rock in your shoe? Not just like, yo, bro, man, you got that swag walk. No, just you want to have people who are going to be honest and helpful with you on your journey. People are going to be transparent and honest with you. You want to attract these people to your life. And what does this come with? It's staying consistent. If you're anything like me, what I do every day, I read affirmations to myself every morning. And they're literally right next to my bed, in a way that I tell myself, I'm one of the luckiest beings in the universe. I'm a inspirational, insightful, and loving leader. Things about my relationships, other things. But starting my day out and telling myself these things, listening to mantras and combinations help attract these same types of people that align with these things in my life. Because with the nature of reality and everything being vibration, you have to put some forth effort, or else you will be pushed into a certain direction. Everything is vibration, just like the plants outside. If you don't do anything to tender it, it's just going to grow however it grows. Yes, wild is fine, but if you have an intention of where you want to go, otherwise the universe intentions of others will push you to where you maybe don't want to go, because you just end up riding the wave, riding the vibe. But sometimes when you're riding the vibe, you want to at least be able to move the sails to determine, oh, you know what, I might not want to go that way. It's very important. Yeah, and reading the page of affirmations when you wake up and before you go to sleep, that's the time that your brain is most susceptible. So like say 20 to 30 minutes right when you wake up and before you go to sleep, your brain is shifting its states. So in order to reprogram your subconscious mind, you do things before you go to sleep and right when you wake up. And just like speaking with law of attraction, you do that and your life will change, but it comes with persistency. I like to say our lives are like cruise ships, right? So if you want to make a change, you can't just pop a U-turn. It's going to flip everything over and you're just going to have to figure out what the fuck's going on. If you really want to make a change and go in a different direction, just make a few slight changes, a degree or two, and stay persistent. Because think about it. If the waves are going this way and the current's going this way and you want to go that way, you have to stay persistent because the current's going to keep pushing you back to the direction that you were going. So if you want to keep going in a certain way, you have to stay persistent and sometimes push against the current until you end up in other waters, or until you just realize something that has become habitual and is starting to take you into fresher waters, to stay in the same metaphor. Kind of like, I would say, transmutation. Can you not hit this, please? Yeah. So that's like when I'm talking about transmutation. So when I say transmutation, you hear shadow work all the time, but earlier while I was saying I don't really like this word shadow work, because it makes it seem like a part of the spiritual journey. Shadow work is something that supplements it, and not as if in your spiritual journey dealing with darker sides of you, the parts of you that hold you back, is not a part of growth in the first place, right? Because that's one of the most important parts. If you're going to want to get to a place of peace and calm and have that be inside, first you got to learn how to have this, and it's good you're writing it down. You're going to have this inner peace and this calm in this place within yourself by accepting these dialogues that are going on. And I won't say reject the other ones, but discover where these voices are coming from, right? Discover where all these other narratives arise from. It's really important to do this. And when I say discover, this comes with reflection. One of the main things that grinds the gears of the nectar of higher consciousness is self-reflection. You must self-reflect. All the things you're writing down, Schmeinke T, I know I probably said that wrong, but all the things you're writing down, reflect on these things. I mean, like, write them down, revisit this tomorrow, or just kind of go about your thing, revisit this next week, and then make that a thing. Like, journaling is huge, but what's even bigger is going back and rereading the journals that you wrote. That's a whole nother level of the game. You want to go from gold to platinum level, reread the things you wrote and actually meditate on those things. Really think about it. When you see a quote on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, screenshot it and then really think about it. Don't just, oh, that's really cool. Spiritual. Think about it. Yeah. Our emotions are very important. They give us information on our well-being, like the self-reflection. Indeed. And try this, watching your emotions from almost like a second person in a way. Like watching your emotions as they're occurring. Because get this, a lot of emotion is biochemical, right? There's a higher level of emotion that comes from a divine place, and there's another level of emotion that is truly 100% biochemical. All right, so you want to be able to determine and watch when these chemicals are firing. Like, why do they say anger is boiling up inside? Why do they say love is swelling? Why do they say happiness comes out of me? Why do they say laughter bursts? All right, these are behaviors of, if you remember in chemistry class, you put some vinegar and baking soda together, or you just make some good food and it takes a while before it emanates out of it. Notice these behaviors of these emotions and the way that your logic shifts in these different states of mind. Like what I was talking about last week with personas. We use the word person. All right. Get into etymology. It is etymology. Etymology. For those of y'all listening on the repeat, what that is like the science or the what makes up words. All right. English, we borrow from a bunch of languages from the past. All right. So you need to start to look and understand about the words that you're using, because like I talked about on my Instagram post today, what does it make when you're putting down a word, right? When you're making a word, that's called spelling, right? For people doing witch talk or into magic or any of that stuff, it's all the same. Realize law of attraction. What you're saying, you're creating the reality you experience. So when we're using the word person, right? Person comes from personas. A personas, look up personas Greek. Shminky. It's a lot of case. But a persona, right? Look up personas Greek. Personas Greek. When you look that up, you'll see a personas. A personas is the mask that a Greek player will that they wear in a play. All right. So a persona is a mask that you wear. But the thing is, people are like, oh, wow, so everyone's fake? Well, okay, I'm not going to get into that real versus fake argument. Like that stuff, it gets really petty. And the thing is, that's more bringing out awareness of what is this consciousness behind the persona? What is operating behind all these masks? When you're rowing down the boat gently down the stream, who's the one that's rowing? Who's riding? If the stage is merely an actor and we're all players, who's the director of the film? Who wrote it? All right. This is when it comes into the higher self, right? Or a higher state of consciousness. Because for this, I don't separate the higher self from myself. Rather, all it is a lack of awareness of separation. Because humans, we're not just a physical form. We're a spiritual entity that is using this as a vehicle to do everything we need to do. However, the vehicle of the suit that we pilot, that is the human body, is of a vibration so high that goes outside of the Roy G. Biv spectrum, or the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet. Higher self or creator. Okay, I'll get into that. In a second. So when I get into higher self, because you hear all these things used as different ways, because yes, indeed, we are conscious creators. But when you get into creator, are you speaking of referring to a creator as in like the consciousness that everything comes inside of, or like you create the reality you experience? Because that's some of the things we use. That's one thing about English. Like we use this one word to describe all these other things. We have to add all this other stuff to describe what we're getting into. Because I do agree and I resonate with that we are creators. But when I say higher self, I'm really referring to, so just in that same way. But when I say higher self, I'm referring to the part of your human being that is existing at a higher vibration of reality and thus experiences other dimensions. And when I say other dimensions, I'm not just talking about 3D, 4D, 5D. Like that's another thing. A lot of that stuff is, I'm not going to get into it right now unless people ask questions. But a lot of that stuff to me, it's like borderline horseshit. Why do I say that? Because why are there only 9 dimensions? Are there only 9 colors? Or are there shades in between? It's just like a radio station. Is there only like 100, 102, 103, 104? Or do you have all these different layers in between where you get these little glimpses inside of reality that you experience? So just trying to limit to something to numbers we can count on our hands really shows the limits of our human intelligence trying to make sense of things. And so when it gets into the high density, so if anything, high density makes more sense than high vibration. Because when you think about high vibration, my guitar is not in reach right now. But when you think about high vibration, that's talking more about pitch. Like it's not as distinctive of like, oh, well, this is a really high vibe thing. Okay, well, what do you mean by that? All right, so to get into density, I spoke about this a few back ago, but when it's talking about like a high density of vibration, that's what you almost equivalent to low vibration, right? So what is something that's of high density when it comes into physics? All right. Something like a pen. This is high density because what we call a solid, it's a bunch of dense atoms together that really don't move as much. But this is like a high density form, right? So this is a high density form because it's a cluster of atoms closer together, right? What's something that's lower density? All right. I have a liquid here. I'm not going to spit on the ground, but like you get what I mean. Like a liquid is something that's of less density And then you go into gaseous forms or even things of light based, because what is all this stuff that you see anyway? It's light reflecting off into your brain, being flipped upside down. And then yourself and your perception, the reality that you understand and that you conceive, creates what you think is right in front of you. This gets into the reality that you see. And when I get into what I was going to talk about today, too, when it comes into shadow work and all this other stuff, is being conscious and being aware of when you ask for guides and spirit guides. That's one thing I see too much for my people on TikTok, or have you ever seen it? That's one thing that people do not give enough warning about, is just opening yourself to spirit guides. Okay, because why I heed, like, don't just be doing this shit, because you got to think about it. If you're a human, you probably are less than 100 years old, and the way that you actually remember your consciousness, right? You could say you're super old. I'm super old, right? But my body is less than 30, right? Depends on your state of mind. Oh, I just saw that. But when it gets into, yeah. So yeah, you yourself could be your own guide. But what I'm saying is, what I'm going on is, when you're asking for guides, you're invoking these other entities that are thousands of years old, that have been interacting with humans for eons. And it's telling you that it's Michael. It's telling you that it's Gabriel. It's telling you that it's this. It's telling you that it's this thing. And you're putting your trust into it and not taking the trust out of yourself. Not taking the trust in your own heart, and to learn how, like Schmeike says, be your own guide. All right? Because the thing is, at the end of the day, is to realize that the brain, what I was going to is the brain, and it's out a lot of phenomena that's right in front of our faces. All right, the technology's out there. You look at the CIA documents, all this thing, holographic universe. I'll do a completely another podcast on that topic. But with that, realize that the technology exists for something to be in the room with you right now. You have no idea that it's there. You can't smell it. You can't taste it. You could even hear it, and it's deleted from your memory. Right? And when it comes to that, I'm talking about, say, a species of conscious beings that, say, 1,000 years more advanced. I'm not just talking about humans. I'm talking about a different species also inhabiting the same planet that's more advanced than us. Right? We need to understand these things and realize how the brain is translating what we see from our spirit to us, and then start to bypass it. My teacher, he calls it the governor. All right. You need to learn how to bypass that, because the brain, like, you could try this out. Just look at your wall, or look for something, some random patterns. And the first thing your brain looks for is 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth. You're going to always see, why do I see faces everywhere? Because your brain is trying to break it down and see faces. Like, that's just what happens. Even though there could not be a face there at all, there could actually be something else that's too high for you to truly understand. So your brain breaks it down to a face, right? Just like if you're ever done any type of psychedelics, or if you're like a real deal meditator and you're going deep, or you just happen to be gifted, some things that you translate, realize that the experience that you garnered, it's almost like a Netflix movie, right? Do you want to just be like, oh, wow, that was really cool. I guess all these dimensions and all this shit, it was super cool. Okay, you just got like the little piece of candy, and you got like, ha, 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 ha. And you're along the ride, and you forgot where you were going or why you even took it in the first place. Like Schmeike says, you need to learn how to trust your heart. Garner this thing from your experience, right? When you have these experiences on a higher level in your spiritual journey, experiences reach their own plateau. And the way where it's just like people be taking stuff, I'm going to get on psychedelics, right? Well, people just taking psychedelics because that's their way of spiritual experience, of seeing it, because it's like along for the ride type of thing, without really garnering or having the discipline and the patience. That's the biggest thing, the discipline and the patience to build your mind up to that state in order to access those places. But in addition to that, when you're going into these spaces and you have these experiences, write this stuff down and reflect on what you learned, because most likely your brain was translating stuff back to you, but that was not what was actually there, because you can't really see anything outside of your own imagination, because your brain just will not construct that. That's just the way it works, right? You've seen tongue twisters and all these things, and you've seen the things where they spell words and every single word is misspelled, but your brain puts it together even though that's not there. Have you ever considered it does it with words, so why doesn't it do it with phenomena? What about when you're like walking down the street and you thought you saw like something standing there and you look again and it's a mailbox? Why would it be anything different that's occurring? You need to start to realize what's going on. But then I go and get into psychedelics. It's medicine, but in the same thing, it's sacred, it's beautiful, so thus it must be respected. You want to make sure, like I'm going to even use the term trigger warning. You want to make sure you're not like molesting or raping psychedelics. You need to respect it. It's a feminine aspect that goes into that gives you creation and opens you up to the cosmos, the universe. You don't just want to be abusing it and going into it every single time, just like cannabis. That's not something to abuse to do every time to start disrespecting the substance. It's something that's beautiful, that's sacred, that's beautiful. The spirit, you could say the indigenous peoples who did these things, there was entire ceremonies around this. These were special days, states of mind that go into this. Not just, oh, I'm going to watch some really trippy stuff and I'm going to take some acid. Like, no, like you're completely disrespecting that way of consciousness, that mirror, that portal that you're opening your mind to. And then when it gets into me, I'm really big on plant medicines, not as much the synthetic stuff. And for the pure reason that the plant, like when you look into, say, the chemical and the chemical structure of things like peyote or psilocybin, stuff like that, it works really well with your brain without really damaging it too much. But things like, like citric acid diethylamide or LSD, that type of stuff, if you do it too much, what I like to say, what you're doing when you take this stuff, because it's things that are there already, you're just opening it. What it's basically doing, it's like kicking the doors down like 300. This is Sparta, kicking the door down, gates of your mind to open it up. But what happens with that? The frames of the door get damaged. All right. And then the craziest thing is you don't even remember how you got there. You didn't navigate internally. You took something to help you navigate internally. You took something external to help you navigate internally. So what you want to ensure that you do, if you do choose to use synthetic substances, is be conscious with these things and then watch out how often you do them. Because I fully believe this. Some of the people, if you got homeless people in your city and you see someone talking to something that's not there, it wouldn't surprise me if these are some people from the 60s who like took liquid acid and like have been tripping for years. And that seems really cool until you start to not be able to separate the reality that you experience and that everyone else is around you. Unable to close these doors in your mind. All right. Because if you look at what these masters in the Himalayas or in the mountains and other places, what they're doing, why are they sitting there giggling all the time? They're basically like getting to these higher states of consciousness. I need to find the Sanskrit word about what it is. My teacher, he calls it in between. But it is very much a accessible state of consciousness that is a sacred place of consciousness that you can get to naturally with meditation. I've been there in the lighter forms, but the biggest thing is with it, once you start to attach your words to it, it just falls apart. Like you really have to watch from an observer state of consciousness, truly from a heart state, not from the mind, oh, wow, everything's going wavy. Everything becomes straight again. Because these things, they take time and discipline in order to achieve these things. Not just like you're scrolling, oh, how to have an awakening, listen to this music. Like, all right, it activated something within you, but do you actually have the patience, the time, the diligence to write these things down, to meditate, to do Qigong, to reflect? Oh, that didn't work. Let me try this out. Write it down, reflect. Or are you just taking all these things that you see at face value and accepting them as your own without any type of application? Or are you just taking all these things in and then reiterating them without any type of, again, application into your own self? Because a lot of the times a lot of the things I see are people that recite things and recite things and recite things without actually putting any application into their own lives. Or when you learn this knowledge, learning how to apply that into your life, put in that work on the mat, like you ain't getting away from meditation. Like if you want to elevate yourself spiritually, you have to meditate. I want to say that, like you got to do that stuff. If you're going to reach a certain plateau without meditation, if you want to continue to advance yourself and go through these harder parts of your consciousness and things that you see that are weighing you down, what's really weighing you down is yourself, B. It's not the rest of the world. It's yourself and your attachments to the world, and not trying to shortcut it by like, oh, well, I'm just going to ignore everything. Well, that's still within you. Because yes, nature is near inconceivable in its wisdom, yet all is made abundantly clear in its character. Symbiosis and emergent is like the bass and treble of its song. Likewise, with the bass and treble of its song relating to music, I encourage you to read Drumvalel Melchizedek's Ancient Secrets of the Flower of Life, Volume 2, because in its wisdom is the basis of the code that constructs this holographic reality that you experience. It is called phi. It is called the golden ratio, the same ratio that's when you're looking at a pine cone, the same ratio in a sunflower, the same ratio that when you're closing your hand, the same exact ratio when it comes to the galaxies, the same ratio even when you flush your toilet. What is it? It's like, oh, toilet jokes. Now think about it. What is it? It's everything going inside into a central point. Just like the galaxy, everything going inside into a central point. This ratio shows up over and over and over and over again. It's like, as something is super intelligent, you don't got to do the same thing twice. You just, if anyone does any type of coding, like computer coding, you just copy and paste shit. Like, it makes it a lot easier and you change some stuff. It speeds it up. You don't got to make new code. If it works, it works. And when I was getting into music and its song, because music is like one of the many languages of the universe. Because if everything is vibration, music is just us kind of starting to understand the grammar and not be like babies anymore, but to understand the grammar and the intention that is behind this stuff. Music medicine, just going to shamelessly plug. I got an album out right now on Apple Music. I don't know if it's on Spotify yet. It's called Divinations by Sensei Shui. I do make healing music, by the way. You should check it out. It's psychedelic sound bathing, so it's not like the calm, like it. I've had people say it makes them feel like they're tripping. So you should check it out, because I call myself psychedelic sound bathing, because psychedelic means mind expanding. It's not just something to chill you out, but something to chill you out and help you expand your mind, your consciousness. So I help you. Oh, you actually know. Yeah, thank you. I haven't posted those officially. So you're watching, you've been on my SoundCloud. So thank you. So a lot of that stuff on SoundCloud, I'm just putting, no, not just Apple Music. So I posted it through and it's getting in the approval process. So it's on Apple Music and Google Play and a bunch of other stuff. I just know it's not on Spotify yet, unless I like legitimately just got an email that, hey, your stuff is approved on Spotify. Because just with my name and stuff, Spotify takes a little bit longer. But yeah, when it comes to music and the universe, even if what's really interesting, right? If you're into music at all, you know that there's basically 7 notes, right? At least in the Western thought, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? Why is there, if any people go like really deep into Christianity or anything like that, or even Hebrew, they say that Elohim, all right? It doesn't say God created, it says Elohim. Elohim is 7. It's 7 entities, all right? People who are into all this doomsday stuff, they say the 7 trumpets of Revelation, right? All these things, the 7 days of creation, all right? These 7 things, these 7 different harmonics of sound, the 7 colors of the rainbow, right? The 7 chakras of the human system. That if you go into Egyptian, it's 13 chakras because they add in the half notes in between, right? All these things are connected, because I'm one that I like to talk about the vibrational nature of reality. There's plenty of people who talk about the particle nature, but let me talk about the vibration, the vibratory nation, the flowing aspects of reality with things that meld through when we're shifting, just like when it's raining on the ground and you see these different paths open up. Likewise, when you change your perspective, you do this, what they call shadow work, AKA actually doing the real, you taking your spiritual path fucking seriously and addressing yourself and your own bullshit and overcoming that, and realize what's keeping me back from reaching higher. It's myself, and lying to myself about, oh, well, I don't have to do this stuff. Oh, well, I can still drink this. I can still smoke that. I can still do this stuff. And it's like, I'm not talking down on any of these things, but rather realize when you need to go through certain states, there's some baggage that you do need to drop along the way if you want to keep going. Otherwise, with the vibrational nature of reality, you cannot fake your vibe. You cannot. Like, a G is a G, a is a F is a F. That's just what it is. And your vibration, or your collective, your tonal of your being as an energy being, is what grants you access to these other dimensions. Right? Because that's the thing why I say some things you will need to drop along the process, and dependencies. A lot of things that we used to cope, because that's a word I've been thinking about, like, all coping really does sometimes is delay your healing process. Because what is coping? Sometimes it's not truly accepting things all the way and dulling it down rather than addressing it layer by layer. Because how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you heal a trauma? One layer at a time. All right. But it's as we go through these layers, as we go through these beliefs, especially addressing it and not medicating ourselves down to truly fully feel these things. Because sometimes you see, especially people in the spiritual that are spiritually attuned, getting attracted to drugs, getting attracted to other types of life that are delayed, like I would say physical substances and other types of addictive behaviors. Why? Because we are blessed with a higher level of sensory, yet people somehow don't teach you how to develop and protect yourself with sensory besides trying to get you to buy some rocks. All right. I talked about that earlier, but the thing is, do not give your power away to some stone. All right. What I like to say when it comes into crystals, all it is are different types of minerals that work better for imbuing different types of energy. Just like in your phone, there's specific metals with certain aspects of conductivity that allow for everything to be seen. The phone, the type of metal that your screen is made of, out of to watch me right now, is a specific type of metal that works for this specific type of thing. You can't just get iron and make a phone screen out of it. It doesn't work. I don't even know the name of the phone screen, but it's rare and it's from Africa, right? Or actually, it's not called Africa. It's called Emexam. You can look it up. Emexam. It was called Africa once it was colonized. All right. So I'm going to go back before I get on that rant again. Coping mechanisms. The therapist assigned to me tried to support me through this, what I was dealing with. Despair, bad judgment, choices. But once I walked to the idea of develop spiritually, I was able to heal myself and regenerate much easier and on your own. Because with spirituality, what does that come? It becomes knowing ourselves. It becomes accepting these things and the power to heal ourselves. All right. So if we have the power to hurt ourselves, then we also have the power to heal ourselves. It's with this. What do you want to do? All right. What do you want to do? What path do you want to walk on? Seize that power back from yourself. Stop giving it away to some other entity, to some piece of metal, to some wand, to something else. Use that as a help if you need, some tools, but not like putting all your trust, your faith into this. And through that, yes, comes awareness. And with awareness, because awareness is the name of the game. You see all these people, that's another word for woke, right? I like the word awareness better because half the time, when I see the word woke, I'm like, man, have these people sleep. But in the way, when you start to think of yourself better than someone else, you just fell back asleep in another stance, right? Because everything is relative. Everything is relative to something else. If you start to compare yourself to others, you just fell back into that ego trap, right? Thinking somehow you're better because you're a G and not a B flat. He's like, man, I'm not a B flat, huh? But a G and that harmonizes, right? At the same time, if you know how to play it right. So if anyone has any questions, I'm going to keep going for maybe another 5-10 minutes, unless people have some other questions. I was talking about shadow work, talking about transmutation, got into giving power away for a little bit. A relative contrast polarity. So if you could put that into relative contrast polarity. So are you talking about like polarities of consciousness or polarities of what you would say of like male and female, what people call that? Because that's even something I'd like to touch on for briefly. I encourage y'all to really look up and read into polarities of what your being is like into this human form. All right. Because I've been getting deeper and exploring Qigong and energetic practices. And with that is understanding that if you are incarnated, I would say like this: male and female, good, bad, yin, yang. Okay. So for that, this is another thing. So when I get into male, female, I'm gonna slide into this. All right. So when I'm talking about male, female, I'm meeting, because I know we're moving into different times. I'm talking about if you're XX or XY genetically in your chromosomes, because that goes into how energetically you are plugged into this vehicle that you use to pilot this dimension. All right. So if you're putting, so XX would be like female, XY male. All right. But I'm going to use chromosomes so people understand this is something that cannot be overwritten. All right. Because this is the way that your consciousness is plugged into it. The way you get plugged out is upon death. Astral projection, your soul isn't leaving your body. It's a probe. That's for another day. All right. Like, if you're sending a satellite, like if you're sending a little, like a drone away, it's not your soul leaving your body. That's why most people fail at it, is because they think their spirit's actually leaving their body. It's not. You're sending a little probe out. All right. But when you're getting into, say, if you are XY oriented, like myself, right? So we're getting into positive and negative polarities. This knowledge is coming from the Ancient Secrets of Flower of Life, Volume 2 by Drunvalo Melchizedek. All right. So with that, they break it down into, they call it earth and sun in that one, but AKA positive and negative. And I'm talking like a battery. All right. Because good and bad is relative. All right. So I'll get into that next part too. But when it gets into how, if you are XY, how you're implemented. Whoa, excuse me. When it gets into the heart consciousness, if you heard me talking earlier, heart, what if the cord breaks during astral projection? The thing about you too is, why do you have a necessary need to feel like you need to attach a cord in your mind when you're astral projecting? That's another thing. A lot of these things that you see that are written are these other types of limitations that are put onto the experiences that you can have by feeling a need to have a cord, feeling a need to have a human body. And I'll get you at this one, having a need to see in 180-degree spectrum. Why can't you see in 360 if you don't have a body? Because that's another thing when you have your mind, like seeing from a human brain when you're having experiences, and if you're seeing just like a human being, but if you don't have hands, eyes, nose, mouth, nervous system, why are we still restricting what our spirit can see by human constraints? All right. And so when it gets into male, female, so just like to the point, masculine has your positive polarity is coming out your chest in the same way, positively oriented. You could say that tetrahedron, when you see the star David, star Saturn, whole nother topic, but how that's implemented. Do you think shields for projection also limit us? Yes, they do, because they limit you in the way of that. So shields for astral projection limit you in the way that you think about you're putting up a defense mechanism, or you're putting up, like, think about it like this. Like when you have your computer and you have like your antivirus protection on there, and you go on a website and you try to click it open and you can't get the download, even though you actually need it. But the pop-up's like pop-up blocked, pop-up blocked, pop-up blocked. Very similar things, because somehow humans, we have all this fear when we're exploring other dimensions, yet our energetic form is very powerful in these spaces. And so when we put these shields of protection, since everything being vibrational in nature, when you put these realms of protection on you when you're doing your astral projections, it can actually limit what you experience, because it cannot enter into your field. All right. It can't enter into your field because you're putting too much out. Like the sun is shining too hot. It can't get soup too hot. Can't eat it. Got to blow it out real quick. All right. But to answer the question I was going on and keep getting brought up. So male, basically, if you're XY, because this is how it gets into how you're plugged into your body, is based on your chromosomes, based on the way your genetics are. All right. So if you have XY chromosomes, all right, your positive polarity is going out your chest. So that's why masculine or positive is a pushing. It's a push, right? That's the nature of the direction. It's a pushing, right? If you are XX or female, right? Genetically, you are pull, right? Magnetism. It's a pull in. Think about the way the organs are designed. The masculine is a pushing organ. Feminine is a receiving organ. All right. That's how it works. If you even think about flowers, right? How's it even work? The male and female parts. Have you ever put together like tools or something? It's male, female. What is that? If you even look out in the sky, you put a tree in the ground, you put a plant in the ground. If you ever look at the matrix and a bunch of zeros and ones, what is it? It's zeros and ones. Like, it's the nature of reproduction. We don't have to keep reinventing the wheel here. Like for some reason, humans think it's like a lot more to like, oh, I'm going to add more words to this stuff and make it super complex. Somehow this advances, where it's like, you know what? How about let's look back into what other people were saying and go deeper into it instead of trying to prove something else. All right. So to answer the other question from Schmikey, if you're still on here. So they said, I understand I can develop and go up, but will I eventually go down, like go to sleep? I feel very free, and I've been taking action towards working through my experiences and learning more. So this is a really interesting thing that's not spoken about enough when it comes on the spiritual journey about like, oh, do you ever fall back asleep? And that to it, I say, yes, you do. And yes, does everyone else. If they don't, they're fucking lying to you. All right. Why do I say this? Because just like everything in life, is it summertime all the time? Does it never rain? Does it never get cold? Do you never have to eat food ever in your life? Right? Or do you eat? Are you always full, or do you have to re-up? Everything has a cyclical nature of reality. And when I was talking about personas earlier, and I talked about this in my last episode, but when you're in these higher states of consciousness, if you ever really get there, or if you've ever tripped before, that's a kind of a taste in it. It's really irritating to be around other human beings or people of a low vibe, right? Because when you're in that space, it's just, there's just too much going on. Data's moving too fast. Everything else is too dense. It's disturbing to you. But just like everything, it's tools in a toolbox. You don't use a hammer to screw to to put together IKEA desk, right? Use a screwdriver, right? Sometimes higher consciousness has its place. It's more about knowing the map and how to get there, and sometimes how to come back. It's in these cycles you can decide, do you want to keep cycling here, or do you want to keep cycling up and cycling up and cycling up and cycling up, and learn how to come down when you need to come down? Because sometimes on this spiritual journey, just like the Jedi in Star Wars, it's not always the time to be flipping around and taking out your lightsaber and be like, it's not always time for that. It's not always time to be like making stuff come to your hands. Sometimes you just got to go around and like drink some water and like chill. Like you don't always need to be at that level all the time. Have you ever look at master characters in movies and stuff? Half the time they're just chilling, living a really simple life. And then when it shows on, then it's showtime. They're not, all the time, because it's more about knowing how to get to the path and how to return. It's not about staying there all the time, because these higher states are exhausting. All right. They're exhausting. They take a lot of data. They use a lot of sugars in your brain. It's only a certain amount of time before you have to come back down. There's nothing wrong with falling back asleep, but the biggest thing is being aware that you fell back asleep and waking back up. The biggest thing is when it's coming to vibrational natures of reality and it comes to water, you want to realize, how do people drown, right? How do people get lost in the ocean? They stop paddling back and the current takes them out too far until they lose sight of the shore. All right. That's one thing you want to be wary of. It's okay if you fall asleep, but it's just like, that alarm. Make sure you set that 10-minute, 15-minute alarm when you like reset your alarm and you get your ass up. Don't just be like keeping going and then you miss everything for the day and now you fell asleep and missed it. And now you're in a whole nother situation that can you even get yourself out of it, right? Likewise, on the spiritual journey, if you find yourself falling asleep, the whole game is understanding that you fell asleep and waking back up. Or, hey, you know what? I've been up for a little bit. I'm going to sleep for a little bit to give this a break and reflect and come back. Because the other side of this, if you're really pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding at this all the time, the nature of this reality, the nature of the matrix, this ain't an easy game. This is a master program. You on like extra hard level type shit, right? You keep doing this stuff, there's a natural program to make everything dulling for you, to help limit your experiences if you keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Like you think you like sweet potato pie, pumpkin pie, whatever it is, eat it every day and you get sick of it. Just like, you listen to me every day, you might get sick of it. Just like if you meditate in the same exact way, the same exact time, in the same place every day, you're going to have amazing experiences and then it's going to go away and then you're going to get distracted and then you're just going to be automating the motions and not really putting your heart into it like you used to. That's more reason to start to mix it up. Go for a walk, change the type of meditate, experiment with different types of meditations, listen to different types of music, try meditating in a mall with a bunch of crazy people. All right. What I really mean by that is like legitimately try meditating in places that's like, it makes no sense to, because you got to learn how to train yourself to get into these states amidst the chaos. All right. Like Yeshua, right? Learn how to be calm amidst the storm, because when it was raining and because he did a sit hit. All right. A sit hit or a miracle to make the rain stop. What did he do? This is a holographic universe. None of this shit's fucking real. All he did was take what was already in his heart, this calm state, arising out the calm. Homeboy was asleep while everything was going on, for crying out loud. Everyone was freaking the fuck out. He was just like, oh, what you want? The calm from within his heart, he brought out, went into that state and calmed the storm. All he did is bringing this internal reality to the outside. Likewise, if people are arguing, going crazy and shit, you want to calm stuff down. How do you calm them down? You don't calm them down by yelling. You calm them down by talking in a nice voice, emanating love from your heart. Or if you know the like Hawaiian here, the Ho'oponopono, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. So I forgot the first one. If someone knows it, go ahead, comment it. But that's the Ho'oponopono type of healing, when it's like, I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you. Thank you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you. Thank you. That place, it's so sincere. And those people who like literally change environments, that's just what they're emanating out their heart. And they can do it at any type of environment, because that's what it's about. It's about learning how to go into these states and operate in the midst of chaos. It's all these practices. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive you. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for that. So that's the whole science behind it. So Shmaiki, if you're on, I just to reiterate this, like when you're going up in your journey and you come back down, realize just like the waves in your surfing, just like the wind currents, when it's really windy outside, the wind ain't blowing hard the whole time. It's not the same speed the whole time. It comes at different spans, comes at different weights. It comes at different times. Likewise, in your spiritual journey, accept these things. It's more about being aware of when you fall asleep and waking back up. Because just like if you're on a raft and you chilling in the ocean, if you don't keep pedaling after a while, you're going to drift out to sea and lose sight of the shore. That's the last thing you want to happen. Or that's another thing. Let's not say that anymore. Why do you say the last thing you want to happen? So what happens last? Because you said you wanted it to happen, right? Be conscious of the words and the phrases that we are programmed to say, right? Just like I say, happy sun time. Good day to you. I don't say good morning because I'm not sad about shit, right? Because what do you do when you're mourning? You're at a funeral, right? Think about it. Think about what you're broadcasting, because a lot of this stuff, you probably see this a lot, but how many people take the good out of it and say mourning and they're sad, they're tired, they're working a job they don't want to do, about to sit in traffic, about to drink coffee because they couldn't sleep, living a life they don't want to do, and a house they want to do, in a loveless marriage, da-da-da-da-da-da, X all the things, and they wake up every day, and the people they say, then the great everybody else with is morning. They're creating the reality they experience. Be conscious of the words that you spell, like write it on paper, that you spell every single day. Be conscious of it. Make these different choices. And the thing is, talking about programs and shit, right? There's this natural reaction to you and your heart being like, I want to say something when I'm like, grand risings to you. Most people are so like, I won't say asleep, but this is getting long, but this is for another day. You got to realize everyone's not super conscious, and that's okay. All right. Because if so, that also be that's unbalanced. All right. Because if you're thinking of the earth like an organism, when we are the cells on the organism, what type of cells would we be? Right. Really think about it. What cells in your body kind of have this memory that transcends time? And if something happened once, they remember and they come back and they come back, they come back, and they fight off illnesses. They identify the things and the problems in the world and they actually go after it. Those are the white cells, right? Because there's not that many of them in the body. If the percentages is like maybe less than 1%, it's like a 15th of percent, something like that. I don't know. I'm not a biologist. But with that, realize that is your role. If you're listening to this, you are of that thought of mind to be able even to hold this conversation and not just fall by the wayside. You were created unique. You have a special purpose. You were put here with an intention. And it's more for you to accept that and to move forward with it. Yes, there's hard paths along the road, and those hard paths, unfortunately, have been called shadow work, and not just like it's a part of it. Like if you're trying to get stronger and you think you're not going to get sore, that's just not how it works, B. Like if you really want to elevate your consciousness and think you're not going to have to face yourself and overcome and get uncomfortable and expand your comfort zone, then you just kind of liking stuff and thinking and, buying cool tapestries and thinking, oh, I'm spiritual. Oh my God. Nah, it's just hopping along for the trend. Are you on for the trend? Are you on here for the ride? All right. Now, with that, I will end the stream. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be going live on TikTok. I'm doing this every other week for Parlez with Sensei Shui, so that way I could give my presence for it. Please ask questions if this is your first time and you really vibed out with this. I got 14 other episodes on SoundCloud. We'll be coming to Spotify, Apple Music shortly. Just a whole process. So just like every time, have a nice day and namaste. For those of y'all listening to the repeat, or if y'all know, I have guided meditations after all the ones, like on the redos. So thank you, everyone, and have a beautiful evening or morning if you happen to be in Australia and it's like 11 a.m.